It's almost that time of the year again, folks. Game Awards is fast approaching, and for 2020, we're finally seeing the nominees for the various categories, including, of course, Game of the Year. So I'm going to go through this list, and I'm going to share my predictions for what will actually win and what my choice, my personal preference is for each respective category. And keep in mind that at the end of the day, no list is ever going to satisfy everyone. Different people are going to have different opinions and preferences. So let's just have fun with this. It ain't that serious. Just love what you love. At the end of the day, we don't need a Game Award ceremony to validate our own preferences. But this is just a fun little game to play every year. So, with that in mind, let's begin. So here are the 2020 nominees on the official Game Awards website. And scrolling down, the first thing we see are the Game of the Year nominees. Now, from the get-go, Last of Us Part 2 being among the nominees no doubt will prove contentious. I'm personally not surprised to see this up there. While it's not among my personal Game of the Year nominees, a lot of people I know did end up loving this game, and Abby and that storyline did end up resonating with them. It did not for me, but, yeah, it is what it is. In terms of what I think will win, I think it's between Hades and The Last of Us Part 2. I feel like that's where the critics are leaning towards. I'm going to make a bold prediction here and say that Hades is actually going to come out on top and be the winner for 2020. There's just an energy that I'm seeing surrounding this game that I haven't seen in a very long time. A lot of people agree that it's just a very special indie title. It may not be AAA in its production value, but it's a very special game, and I would be perfectly okay with Hades winning. Though I'd love to see Ghost of Tsushima winning as well. I think this might be overall my personal game of the year, especially with the Legends multiplayer component that was added after launch. But if Hades won, I wouldn't be too upset either. So I'm going to say Hades for prediction, and for personal game of the year, I think I'm leaning towards Ghost of Tsushima. But these are all fantastic. Doom Eternal is an incredible action shooter game. Final Fantasy VII Remake I had a blast with. Animal Crossing New Horizons is just, it came at the right time, right, as a feel-good game. And then Last of Us Part 2, I had very mixed feelings about. I would not pick this for Game of the Year, but the craftsmanship in this game, for me at least, is undeniable. And so that much certainly deserves commendation. Moving on, Best Game Direction. We've got FF7 Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, and The Last of Us Part 2. I feel like Hades might actually take this. I think it's between, again, in terms of what the critics will choose, I think it's between Last of Us Part 2 and Hades, though Half-Life Alyx is a great choice as well. But this one's tough. The description reads, awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design. For game direction, I think I would give it to Hades. Ghost of Tsushima, I think, is my overall game of the year just by hair. But game direction-wise, there's just a strong vision to Hades and what it wants to be. It just has such a unique identity that is very easy to identify, so I would give this to Hades personally. Scrolling down, we have Best Narrative for outstanding storytelling and narrative development in a game. So Last of Us Part 2 obviously has a very contentious story. People either love it or hate it, depending on how much Abby's half resonated with them. It didn't resonate for me, so I personally wouldn't pick Last of Us Part 2. But again, trying to put myself in the shoes of the panel and the critics, I think Last of Us 2 has a strong chance of winning. Though for this, my pick would also be Hades because of just the way the narrative is presented and how the narrative develops as you continue to win runs. And the way that flourishes is, I think, super interesting. And I was always invested in the mysteries of Hades. and some of the relationships there and the interactions with the various characters. The thing with Ghost of Tsushima is that it took a bit for the narrative to finally really grip me, but once it did, it really struck a chord for me, especially the final act and how all of that culminated with that, I think, really powerful ending. But Hades just kept me narratively invested more consistently, and the way the story unfolds I find to be just a little more interesting. So from a narrative perspective, I would give it to Hades. And as far as critics go, I think it's going to be a close call between Hades and Last of Us Part 2. I'm going to go ahead and predict Hades because that story is universally beloved, whereas Last of Us 2, even among critics, there is some division there. Next up, we have Best Art Direction. This is a tough one because now we're just talking about visuals. Outstanding creative and or technical achievement in artistic design and animation, and I cannot deny that Last of Us Part 2 excels on that front. Again, the craftsmanship that went into the game is undeniable. I think it is without question one of the most gorgeous games that I've ever seen, and from a technical standpoint, maybe the most impressive showcase this year. For this, I would actually pick Last of Us 2, and I think critics will as well. I'm going to predict Last of Us 2 will take this one, though Ori has a very striking art style. Hades has just a very identifiable and really just cool and interesting visual palette that really matches with the game's direction. The aesthetic just really works for this game. Ghost of Tsushima has that incredible game world and everything's always swaying and flowing, and the fields of grass and trees just mesmerize every time. And Final Fantasy VII Remake has some technical issues with like textures and the like, but certainly is an incredible reimagining of the PS1 graphics that's brought into the modern era. All strong contenders. I think Last of Us 2 will take it for this specific category. The other side to that coin is, of course, sound. So we have best score and music. Man, this is tough as well. Why isn't Ghost of Tsushima here? I think the music in that game is really phenomenal. But, Gustavo Santaolalla's work in Last of Us Part 2, I've got to say, is very incredible. I really do love the music in Last of Us Part 2. I think I would give it to Last of Us Part 2 for best score and music. Doom Eternal has that incredible visceral soundtrack as well, though, and Final Fantasy VII's reimagining and reorchestration of some of the original's themes is really wonderful. Hades' music is no slouch either. It just has the perfect atmosphere for what it's going for. Ori, oh man, this one's tough. Yeah, Last of Us Part 2 is going to have to be my prediction and my personal pick, but it's so close. I love the soundtrack for all of these. I would honestly be happy if any of these won. When it comes to score and music, they all did phenomenally. Next up, we have Best Audio Design, which is different from music. Now we're talking about soundscapes, things like footsteps, and all of the audio elements that you hear in-game. That's what's in consideration here. And I've got to say, Last of Us Part 2's audio design is just simply stellar. Ghost of Tsushima, I think, comes at a close second. Half-Life Alyx is very immersive as well with its audio design. I have played Half-Life Alyx, and they do a really good job with it. But Last of Us Part 2's audio design, I think, is just a hair above all the other games this year. So I would actually give it to Last of Us Part 2, and I think Last of Us Part 2 may very well win in that department. Next, we have Best Performance, and while the narrative of Last of Us Part 2 didn't stick the landing for me, I thought the performances across the board from the actors were top-notch. Just from top to bottom, wonderful, wonderful performances with the material that they were given, and I've got to give it up for Ashley Johnson. She would be my personal pick. Her performance as Ellie remains as incredible as ever, especially that museum sequence. Just Ashley's performance there, I thought, was just brilliant alongside the chemistry with Troy. Yeah, I would give it to Ashley easily. Though I wouldn't rule out Laura Bailey winning as Abby, and while I know Abby isn't everyone's favorite character, and while her character didn't resonate with me because of how she was written and structured, the performance that Laura Bailey delivered, I thought, was very effective. And so if she won, I'd be happy as well. Just across the board, excellent performances. Any of them winning, I'd be happy for. But at the end of the day, my prediction and choice goes for Ashley Johnson. We then have games for impact, and I'll admit that I have not played any of these games. What I can tell you is that Kentucky Route Zero does have the higher Metacritic score by a bit. So I feel like maybe this is the game that will win, but in terms of my personal choice, I can't make one because I've not played any of these. Best ongoing, so I guess best live service, if you will. Honestly, I hope they give it to No Man's Sky because this game is done phenomenally with how it continues to be updated and how incredible new content keeps getting added for free. Obviously, it had a rough start, and I'm not excusing the lies surrounding the game's launch, but the game has certainly evolved into something completely new and different and much more expansive and maybe closer to what was originally promised. And it's made a hell of a comeback, and it hasn't really charged extra, via microtransactions or DLC costs. They've just updated the game for it to live up to its original promise, and they've done a stellar work with that. So I would give it to No Man's Sky. As for who's actually going to take it, I think Fortnite once again has a good chance of taking it because it's Fortnite, but I'd like to think No Man's Sky has a damn good chance too. So I'm between those two. Oh, this next one's easy. Best Indie. Hades is among the nominees. Hades is going to take this one easily. It's my pick, and it's my prediction, and I don't think that should come as much of a surprise to anyone. Though Fall Guys obviously made a huge impression, and that's probably going to be the runner-up, but Hades is easily going to take this one. Best mobile game is, I think, very clearly between Genshin Impact and Among Us. Genshin Impact had a pretty major impact. It's performing really well, but it does have questionable gacha elements, loot boxes, and whatnot. And while it is free to play, many have argued that it takes the gacha stuff a bit too far. Among Us, though, I think is a game that has greater impact. Obviously, it went viral this year. Technically, it's a 2018 game, but I guess they're nominating it this year because it was discovered this year and because it had the greatest impact this year. My pick would be Among Us, easily. It's very simple, but it's very effective in getting people to turn on each other in a very fun way. So for me, it easily goes to Among Us, and I think easily the critics are going to pick Among Us as well. So my prediction and my choice goes to Among Us. Then we have Best Community Support, recognizing a game for outstanding community support, transparency, and responsiveness. I would honestly give this one to Fall Guys. The way they're interacting through social media, I think, is really brilliant. Like what they've done with Tin Man or whatever, and how they've kind of been going back and forth in a playful way, and kind of at each other's throat. I don't know, just the way all of that has developed, I thought was really brilliant, and I think contributed greatly to Fall Guys getting more and more traction. There's just an interesting style of communication with Fall Guys, and an interesting way of interacting with the community there that I think stands out. So I would pick Fall Guys, and I would say that the critics will also pick Fall Guys. It's my prediction alongside my choice. Best VR AR game, I think there's no contest here. My pick is Half-Life Alyx, and Half-Life Alyx is most certainly going to win this award. Half-Life Alyx is just an echelon above all of these. It feels like a truly full-fledged AAA flagship VR game, and it's relatively lengthy. It's visually stunning. The gameplay is very solid, very immersively done, just the way you can interact with all of these different objects in the world. Obviously, the narrative continues the Half-Life lore. It's just a stellar VR experience all around. Half-Life Alyx is the choice and the prediction. Innovation and accessibility, recognizing software and or hardware that is pushing the medium forward by adding features, technology, and content to help games be played and enjoyed by an even wider audience. Among the nominees is Last of Us Part 2, and this game did so much on that front that there's no question in my mind Last of Us Part 2 will win this, and I would give this award easily to Last of Us Part 2 as well. Best action game. So for this one, while I do think Hades is a more compelling overall package, when just focusing on the action part of these games, Doom Eternal, I feel, is superior. Just the the combat, the mechanics, the fast-paced nature, and the feel of shooting and slaying demons, ripping and tearing. Doom Eternal just nails that so much that I hope Best Action goes to Doom Eternal. That would be my pick for this specific category. Though I feel like because Hades is kind of the more likely Game of the Year winner versus Doom Eternal, it's going to ultimately end up going to Hades. So Hades for prediction, personal pick, Doom Eternal. That's not to say that I think any of these other titles are a slouch, but I think these two games kind of just have an edge. Moving on, we have Best Action Adventure Game, and for this category, my pick is easy. It's Ghost of Tsushima. I love the open world. Traversing through it is just breathtaking every single time, with the luscious grasslands and forests and whatnot, with, again, the world just constantly swaying and leaves blowing. It's just such a beautiful game to behold, but the combat mechanics, the way it looks, the way it feels is so on point. I love how they emphasize precision and changing stances and having all of these different tools and a great combination of stealth and action. It's just, for me, the best action-adventure experience. Miles Morales is also fantastic, but Ghost of Tsushima feels like a brand new thing, whereas Miles Morales does recycle elements of the original and expands upon that. Ghost of Tsushima just feels like a more original title this year in 2020. Jedi Fallen Order is also a very solid choice, but I did encounter enough technical issues where it doesn't ultimately overtake Ghost of Tsushima. And then Last of Us Part 2, I found the gameplay to be lacking. I found that it outstayed its welcome. It didn't hold me for the 25 or so hours that it took for me to beat this game. It didn't evolve from Part 1 enough for me to consider this as one of the top-tier action-adventure games of this year. Ori, I would say, is not to be underestimated, though I do think Ghost of Tsushima edges it out. And then Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I just don't find it to be superior to Ghost of Tsushima as an action-adventure game. I feel like Ghost of Tsushima does almost every element just better than Assassin's Creed. So with all said and done, my prediction and my choice go to Ghost of Tsushima. Next, Best Role-Playing Game. This is going to go to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Among these 5 games, it's the only one nominated for Game of the Year, so prediction-wise, Final Fantasy VII Remake is easily going to take it. In terms of my personal choice, I would also pick Final Fantasy VII Remake. Persona 5 Royal is a great nomination as well, though because a lot of that content is essentially the game from when it first came out, I think that's why it's ultimately not going to edge out something like Final Fantasy VII Remake. Wasteland 3 also has great reception. Genshin Impact, again, for me, the gacha elements don't do it for me, but that's not to say it isn't fun for a lot of people. And Yakuza Like a Dragon, I've heard very solid things about, but I think Final Fantasy VII Remake is the RPG that had the most impact this year. Best Fighting Game. Not a lot happened with the fighting genre of video games. Between these, I would say that the highest chance of winning is Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate Edition, and this is the game I would probably award it to, but there's just not a lot going on here, really. Now, there are some interesting choices for Best Family, and I think this one will easily go to Animal Crossing. From this list, Animal Crossing New Horizons is the only one nominated for Game of the Year, but I also think it deserves Best Family Game. This is what I would pick, because it just had such a huge positive impact on the world during just such a really crappy year. And while Fall Guys had its time in the spotlight, I think Animal Crossing is just something that people really keep going back to, and it's a game that's constantly updated with new things to collect and new creative endeavors to pursue. Best Simulation and or Strategy Game. So for this one, I am between Crusader Kings 3 and Microsoft Flight Simulator for my prediction. I think Microsoft Flight Simulator is going to take it because what it accomplished from a technical standpoint is pretty astounding. Using real satellite data to essentially recreate the entire world and allowing you to travel from any one destination in the world to the other. Literally, you can go wherever you want. It's pretty incredible, and it really feels next gen. So I think just the accomplishment that this game is automatically is going to make it a win, despite the incredible reception that I've seen Crusader Kings 3 receive. Now, for my personal choice, I haven't played any of these games extensively enough for me to be able to make a judgment, but I feel like there's just something awe-inspiring about what they accomplished with Microsoft Flight Simulator, so I think I'm gonna give it to this title. Best sports and or racing game. It's gonna be tough between FIFA 21 and NBA 2K21. As we know, slot machines, casino gambling, it is a sport in its own right, so man, it's a tough choice between these two. All right, I'm going to stop before I vomit. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake made quite the splash. People are absolutely loving this title, and there's no doubt in my mind that the award is going to go to this game, and this would be, without question, my personal choice. It's both faithful to the originals, but also adds enough modern-day elements to spruce it up and to make it feel fresh. Now, for best multiplayer, I wouldn't say Animal Crossing New Horizons has the best multiplayer experience. The multiplayer implementation, the online stuff, the way they do it, is a bit of a pain, though when you do get it working, it really is a lot of fun to, you know, gather at islands and have virtual parties and just show people around your creations and the like. But there are technical inconveniences with Animal Crossing's multiplayer experience, so I wouldn't give it to Animal Crossing for this category. I would give it to Among Us or Fall Guys. I'm gonna predict Among Us because I feel like it ultimately did have the greater impact compared to Fall Guys. It just went more viral than Fall Guys did, and it's just a very fun multiplayer experience. It really is. Just a very simple setup that works very effectively and keeps people coming back. So for my prediction and my choice, I'm gonna say Among Us. Last but not least, for games, we got Best Debut Game, and these are all solid choices. I think Phasmophobia is going to take it. This is another one of those indie games that went viral, and it's a truly fascinating horror experience from what I've seen. I've personally not played any of these games, so it's hard for me to make a personal choice, but the buzz surrounding Phasmophobia is really something, and I'm going to predict this game's going to take it. Though Mortal Shell is a very solid Souls-like entry, and Carrion I've heard good things about as well. But Phasmophobia, there seems to be something special about it that is also resonating with people in an unprecedented way. The rest of the categories are stuff like Content Creator of the Year and esports categories that I personally don't care much about, so I'm not going to cover those. But as far as video games go, those are my predictions and my personal choices. Again, I know different people are going to have different preferences, opinions, and predictions, and that's totally okay, and I'd love to hear what your predictions and choices are in the comments below. So drop a comment, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.